You already know the name. If you watched the last video, you know where it came from. You know about Hazel. You know about the mango tree and the 14 exercise books and the man behind the door that was always slightly ajar. You know what was written on that single torn page that Mrs. Fasola kept for years without showing anyone. And you know that Hazel Okonkwo did not leave. But what you do not know, what nobody has told you yet, is what happened when the name was finally passed to the wrong girl. Because that is the thing about names like this one. They are not dangerous in every hand. They are patient. They wait. They travel from woman to woman like something sewn into the hem of a garment, invisible until the light hits it a certain way. And they wait for the hand that holds the exact right kind of grief, the exact right kind of fury, the exact right understanding of where the root is. And sometimes, just sometimes, the name reaches someone it was never supposed to reach. Welcome back to Mr. Folktales. If you are new here, go and watch the origin story first. This video will be here when you come back. But if you already know, if you already understand who Pink Lady was before she was Pink Lady, then stay right where you are, because this is the chapter that changes everything. This is the story of Chidoma Adams. Chidoma was 16 when she arrived at Crown Community Secondary School. She was not supposed to be there at all. Her mother, Mrs. Adams, had fought it, had sat across from her husband in their sitting room in Lagos and listed every reason their daughter should not attend that school. She did not say the real reason. She could not say the real reason, because the real reason lived in a corridor, behind glass and brass, and it required 3 spoken words to explain. And she was not ready to explain it. Her husband said Crown Community had improved. New headmaster, new facilities, strong examination results. He said it was closer to his mother's house, where Chidoma would board during the school term. He said it made sense. Mrs. Adams said she would think about it. She thought about it for 3 months. Then she enrolled Chidoma and spent one night in her daughter's room watching her sleep, memorizing the shape of her face the way mothers do when they are about to do something they are not sure is right. Before Chidoma left for school, her mother held her hands and told her 3 things. The first was, study harder than you think you need to. The second was, trust Mrs. Fasola in the records room. She is the only one in that school whose hands are clean. The third thing she did not say out loud. She said it later, in a letter she posted to her daughter at the end of the first term, sealed with extra tape, addressed in her own handwriting, with a single instruction on the outside of the envelope. Open only if something happens that cannot be explained. Chidoma put the letter in the bottom of her box without opening it, because nothing had happened yet that she could not explain. That was January. By April, the envelope was open. Chidoma was her mother's daughter in the ways that mattered. She was serious, she paid attention, she did not miss things. She had her mother's eyes, the kind that did the mathematics of a room before she had fully entered it. She arrived at Crown Community, and within the first 2 weeks, she had mapped the whole structure of the place. Not in words, in feeling. The corridors that felt heavier than they should. The way certain teachers stood outside the mathematics block like they were waiting for something. The way the SS2 girls in her dormitory spoke about examinations with a particular kind of tiredness that was not about the work. She noticed Mr. Badmus the way her mother had noticed Mr. Adeyemi 30 years earlier. Not because anyone pointed him out, because she watched and she understood, and she stored what she understood the way her mother had taught her, quietly, carefully, without letting it show on her face. Mr. Badmus was a shorter man than she expected from his reputation, soft-spoken. He had the particular manner of someone who had never had to raise his voice, because the structure around him did the threatening on his behalf. He smiled often. He called students by their first names. He had a small plant on the windowsill of his office, and he watered it every Monday morning. Chidoma watched him water it once through the window, and understood with the cold clarity of her mother's daughter exactly what kind of man he was. The kind who tends to things he controls. The kind for whom the small domestic gesture is the tell. The proof that he has organized the world around him into something that grows only when he decides to feed it. She stored that, and she went back to class. If you are still watching, drop a comment right now that says Chidoma, because this is about to go somewhere that most people do not see coming, and I need to know you are with me. The letter from her mother sat at the bottom of her box for 3 months. The examination that opened it was in April, second term, mathematics. Chidoma had prepared the way her mother told her to, harder than she thought she needed to. She had found Mrs. Fasola by the second week, had introduced herself as Mrs. Adams' daughter, and had watched the records clerk's face do something complicated and settle into a careful kind of warmth. Mrs. Fasola had given her access to the records room on Saturday mornings without Chidoma having to ask twice. The first page was her mother explaining everything about Crown Community that she had not been able to say out loud before Chidoma left. Mr. Adeyemi and Mr. Badmus, and the door that was always slightly ajar, and the envelopes, and Taiwo who stopped bringing his textbook, and the families who sold groundnuts outside the market. The second page was about a girl named Hazel Okonkwo, and the corridor and the brass plate, and what had happened when Mrs. Adams stood in front of that plate and said a name she had been carrying since a much older woman pressed it into her hands years ago. The third page was the name itself, with instructions. Do not say it unless the root has been named, not the symptoms, not the seniors, not the school, the root, the man behind the door. If you name him first, then say this 3 times, and she will come. But Chidoma, listen to me carefully. She will ask you what you are willing to give. Whatever she offers you, choose the second thing, not the first. The first thing will feel like what you want. The second thing is what you need. I love you. I am sorry I sent you there. But I believe you are the one she has been waiting for. Chidoma read the letter twice. She folded it back along its original creases. She looked at the name on the third page for a long time. Then she put the letter away and went to dinner. She was not ready yet. She had something to do first. What Chidoma did over the following 6 weeks is the part of this story that has been told wrong more times than it has been told right. People say she confronted Mr. Badmus. She did not. People say she gathered evidence the way Hazel did and went to the headmaster. She did not do that either. She had read the story. She knew what headmasters did with evidence. What Chidoma did was simpler and more dangerous. She went to the other students, not the ones who were angry, not the ones who knew they had been cheated. She went to the ones who had paid, the ones whose families had filled the envelopes. She went to them one at a time, quietly, in the library, in the records room, in the corridor after prep, and she said the same thing to each of them. You know what you paid for. I know what you paid for. I am not asking you to do anything about it. I am only asking you to hold this truth inside you and know that it is true. She did not ask them to sign anything. She did not ask them to speak to anyone. She asked them to know. Then she went to the 2 girls who had paid and still failed. The ones whose families had sent envelopes that apparently had not been thick enough. She asked them what they remembered about their examination papers. She listened. She wrote it all down in a new notebook. And then she took that notebook to the one place Hazel had not been able to reach. She went outside the school. Not the education board. Somewhere closer. She found the journalist, a woman named Adaobi Nwosu, who had written a piece on examination malpractice in public secondary schools 3 years earlier for a newspaper in Lagos. Chidoma found the piece in the library archive. She found the journalist's contact information in the newspaper's published staff list. She wrote a letter on 2 sheets of exercise book paper, folded them into a plain envelope, and posted them with 2 weeks of saved chop money. She did not tell anyone. Not the other students, not Mrs. Fasola, not her mother. She waited. She was waiting when the senior girls came for her. It was a Tuesday night. She had not told anyone about the letter to the journalist, but she had been seen going in and out of the records room. And in a school where that particular activity carries that particular history, someone had drawn the correct conclusion and passed it to the wrong person. There were 5 of them, SS3. Large, in the way that people who have power become large, the way authority makes people take up more space than their bodies actually occupy. The one in front was named Blessing, head girl, which meant she had survived 3 years in this school by understanding perfectly which things to protect and which things to let happen. Blessing said, "We heard you have been asking questions." Chidoma said, "I have been studying." Blessing said, "We know who your mother is. We know what your mother did." There was a silence. Chidoma looked at Blessing for a long moment and then looked at each of the other 4 girls in turn, the way her mother looked at rooms doing the mathematics before fully entering. She looked at their faces. She saw something she had not expected to see. She saw that 2 of them were afraid, not of her. They were afraid of the room they were standing in, afraid of the thing they had been sent to do, afraid in the particular way of people who are part of a system and have only just begun to feel its weight on their own chest as well as other people's. Chidoma said, "I am not my mother," she said. "My mother named the system. I am naming the man," she said. "His name is Mr. Badmus, and he has been deciding which children have futures based on how much their parents can pay him. And I have written down everything I know and sent it somewhere that is not the headmaster's office and not the education board." The room held that. One of the 5 girls, the one standing at the back near the door, left. Nobody stopped her. Nobody mentioned it. Blessing said, "You do not know what you have started." Chidoma said, "I know exactly what I have started. I started it with a name." Blessing looked at her for a long time. And then Blessing said something that nobody who tells this story remembers, because it happened quietly and it did not make for a dramatic ending to that scene. Blessing said, "They did it to my cousin too. SS2. 2 years ago. She transferred schools." And then Blessing left. And the remaining 3 girls left. And Chidoma stood alone in the dormitory room and breathed. Drop a comment right now if you felt that. Just the word blessing. Because what happened to that girl matters too, and I do not want to move past it like it doesn't. She came to the school in the 3rd week of May as a parent, a borrowed child in the front seat of her car, her press credentials folded into her bag. She sat in the visiting day compound. She watched the compound the way journalists watch compounds. Chidoma found her by a description in a 2nd letter and sat beside her on the bench near the science block and spoke quietly for 45 minutes. She named Mr. Badmus. She laid out the structure. She gave names of students and years and scores, everything she had gathered over 6 weeks from the students who paid and the students who paid and still failed and the past papers in the records room. The article was published 6 weeks later. It did not name Crown Community Secondary School directly. It named a pattern, a type, a methodology repeated across 3 schools in the state with specific and undeniable detail. Anyone who knew which school had been the source. Mr. Badmus was placed on administrative leave pending investigation in July. The investigation took 8 months. During those 8 months, he continued to receive his salary. The outcome was a formal warning and a transfer to a school in a different local government area. He did not lose his pension. Chidoma had passed her SS2 examinations by then. She sat the examination again under a different invigilator during the review period. She scored 81 out of 100. Mrs. Fasola filed the result herself. She held the paper for a moment before she put it in the folder. Then she went into the back of the records room and stood quietly for 1 minute with her hand on the wall. Nobody saw her do this, or if they did not mention it. The night before the results were posted, Chidoma went back to the memorial corridor, She stood in front of the brass plate the way her mother had stood there years before. She read the name, she read the dates. She stood there long enough for the corridor to get quiet around her. The particular quiet of a building after hours when the children have gone to the dormitory and the teachers have gone home and the school is only itself. She said the name 3 times. She did not feel afraid. She had been raised by a woman who had stood in this corridor and felt what there was to feel. And she had been told clearly what would happen. And she had the letter folded in her pocket with her mother's handwriting on it. And it helped. Hazel came. Chidoma told her what had happened. She told her about the letter to the journalist. She told her about Blessing. She told her about the transfer and the warning and the pension. She told her it was not enough. She told her she knew it was not enough. Hazel listened. The wound on her cheek, old now, part of the face she had been wearing since 1987, caught the corridor light. She asked Chidoma what she was willing to give. Chidoma remembered her mother's letter. Whatever she offers you, choose the second thing. Hazel offered her 2 choices. Chidoma chose the second. She never told her mother what the second choice was. Not in any conversation, not in any letter. Her mother did not ask. Because her mother understood that some things passed between women in corridors at the right time are not meant to travel further than the hands that receive them. What is known is this. Chidoma Adams graduated from Crown Community Secondary School. She studied medicine. She is a doctor now. She works at a hospital 3 hours from where she grew up, in the same state, and she is known by the nurses who work alongside her as someone who looks at suffering and knows what to do about it. She has a daughter. The daughter is 10 years old. Her name is Hazel. But this is not where this story ends, because when Chidoma chose the second thing in that corridor, something shifted in the arrangement. Something about what Pink Lady was and what she was waiting for and what condition needed to be met before she could rest. Chidoma had named the route. She had sent the name to someone outside the walls. She had done what Hazel had done and she had done it further. And yet, Mr. Badmus had received a warning and a transfer, and his pension was intact. The man who built the system Mr. Badmus had inherited had died in 2003 with his grandchildren around him. The route had been named, but naming the route is not the same as ending the route. And in Crown Community Secondary School, in the classroom that used to be Mr. Adeyemi's and then Mr. Badmus's and is now a different man's, behind a different door that is also always slightly ajar, the methodology runs without interruption. Different handwriting on the papers, same red ink, same envelopes, same families selling what cannot be replaced to fill them. Different name on the door, same route. And Hazel Okonkwo remains in the walls of Crown Community Secondary School, patient as old paint, quiet as a held breath, waiting for the name to travel far enough, for someone to pick up where Chidoma left it and go further than a newspaper, than a transfer, than a warning. Someone who understands not just that the man is the root, but that the man was taught by another man who was never stopped, and that that man was taught by an arrangement so old nobody can say when it started, only that it has not stopped.